Alright everybody, and welcome to Robot Build Log number 3. This one is all about setting up Bucky's instant messenger program to work over the internet. Setting it up to work over the internet can be tricky. I wasn't able to find any walkthroughs, only lots of unanswered questions or people saying set up port forwarding. After I went through and I set up port forwarding on my router, it still didn't work. And eventually, after many hours, I figured out that I was actually behind 2 routing devices, and that was what was giving me problems. So I did what I call setting up double port forwarding, and I was able to finally make it work from one device to the other. So I recommend, just like I said before, start small. Set it up just like how he does in the walkthrough. Okay, so when you originally set up this program, you input IP 127.0.0.1, and I'm sure he'll explain it a lot better, but from what I gather, when you put that in and your computer searches for it or tries to send it out or whatever, it says, hey, you know what, this is me, I'm just going to talk to myself in my head here. And your client sends a connection to your server, and your server says, oh, hey man, it's me, and you guys just talk back and forth. You run both programs right there on the computer, no problem. Make sure you do this and it's working before you try to go forward. That way you know there's no problem in your code anywhere else really. So once you get that started, try running it on your own home network. So what you want to do is find the IP of your device and set it as the new client connection in the Java code. So set the client to try to connect to that, okay? So what you want to do is, you can just Google it. For Windows, you want to go Windows plus R, type in CMD and hit enter. When the console window pops up, type ipconfig and it'll list some parameters. Your IPv4 will be in there. And on Raspberry Pi, just go into the console, type hostname-i and it'll pop up. Now, make sure you're finding the IP of the server, okay? Because the client needs to connect to the server. So the server is the one you need to find. Then you need to take that IP and put that into the client connection, okay? I'm not sure if you need to or not set up the port forwarding for this, but if you do, I'll kind of show you how I did it on my router, but they're all pretty similar and it's a pretty popular thing. I recommend just like spending maybe half an hour Googling it. I think it's like portforward.com actually has a ton of stuff on it, but I was able to easily set it up. So my Raspberry Pi was connected by Wi-Fi to my own home network. My computer was connected Wi-Fi to the same network, and by using that IP, I was able to connect from one computer to the other. How it worked on mine is my router sets like each device's IP. So whether it's your cell phone, your laptop, your Raspberry Pi, any Wi-Fi device on your home network will be given an IP. And mine would do 192.168.0, and it was basically 100, and then it started adding a 1 for every new device that was on there. My wife's laptop was like 101, my laptop was 102, Raspberry Pi was 103, and so on. So 103 was the Raspberry Pi, that was the server, and so I input this number with 103 into, it shows right here, into my port forwarding as well as the Java program. So that takes care of that. Now I know that my device knows how to, or my program knows how to set up sockets with another device. It's not just a matter of my Raspberry Pi being stupid or my computer being stupid. They both will do what they're supposed to do. The last problem is trying to get them to connect over the internet. Alright guys, running this over the internet. It should be a fairly simple process. So first of all, you need another way to connect to the internet. Your client system should not be on the same home network as your server system, even just for testing it out. It will not work. So what I did was I just tethered my smartphone to my laptop and ran the client on that and used it to connect to the server that way. The other important thing you need to do is set up port forwarding for any router that it has to come through to get to the server. What this does is make sure that it sends the proper connection to the proper device, basically. When you set up Bucky's client or server, he has you put in port number 6789. So when you set up port forwarding, you say, hey, port number 6789, send it right to the server, okay? And the other thing you need to make sure of is that you've got your server set up on as a static IP, okay? So number 1, connect through another connection. Number 2, set up port forwarding. Number 3, static IP. Now a lot of these things are going to be different depending on the system you're running. But for me, I was using a Raspberry Pi, so I set up a static IP like this. I typed in hostname -I into config, and that told me what my IP was. And then I used that, and it was actually 192.168.0.103. And you want to type in sudo nano, etc., blah blah blah, and then the screen will pop up, and you basically just add these parameters directly after everything that pops up. Now I got all this information. I'm not going to walk you through it because most of you probably aren't coming to Raspberry Pi, but this is where I got that information from. And this is actually a really simple thing to find online. So just look up port forwarding for whatever device you're using, and it's actually a pretty simple thing to set up. Or sorry, static IP. Now I'm going to show you guys these screenshots. So for port forwarding, first thing I did was go into my router, and I think for most routers you type in whatever your IP for your home network is. For me it was 192.168.0.1, and that brings me to the basically login screen for my router. And then you go down, and it's probably pretty similar to most of them. I had a forwarding option where I went and I set up my device port, internal port, and I told it to send all that traffic that was trying to access this port to this IP address. And this IP address is the IP of the server, okay? Make sure you don't make the mistake of setting up with a client. It's the server you want to send all the connections to. So once that was done, I was like, okay, this should work, right? But it didn't. So I was like, okay, what's going on here? I looked up what's my IP, and I found that my IP was 64 point something something 0.29, and I tried connecting to I tried putting that in the client and connecting to the server, and it wasn't working no matter what I did. But then I noticed that in my router settings, the IP it had was 10.0.0.6, and this is for WAN, wide area network. That means this is the IP that it thinks I'm connected to the internet with, which technically should be the same as this one. So this is something basically you send out to the internet, and the internet tells you what it sees, and it's telling me it's 64 point something, but my router thinks it's this. So there must be something going on. So I got into researching, and a lot of ISPs will actually route your connection through another router before it even gets to you. That way they can basically sell more connections to more people without having to buy more IP addresses. So not every household or not every router that they build or they set up might have the same IP address. Now, in my case, this is a little video or image of what it is, right? So in my case, there's the internet is connecting to this one router, which is connecting to the router that's in my house that I plug in all my connections to, or set up my Wi-Fi with, and then you have your computer. Now this router is what was causing the problem, okay? I didn't think I would have access to this. A lot of people probably don't have access to this, but I figured out, I literally just gave it a shot, and I typed in this IP address into my browser, okay? The one that the internet thinks I'm using, I typed that into my browser, and it popped up with a login screen. And I guessed admin/admin, and it worked. I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to be in here, but I got in here. They never bothered to change it. Now, I live in a rural area, and I actually connect to the internet through this little, I don't know, tower thing. Like I have an old TV antenna, which they put a wireless, I guess, receiver on it. And it connects to a cell phone tower, and that is how I receive my internet signal. Now this box up there, I'm assuming that this whole system is actually through that box that's up on my roof, which then has a cable run down to my actual router I have in my house like everybody else does. So this was the 64 point blah 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 0.29 that the internet was seeing, which it then had just a normal network cable running to my router, which was the other IP we saw, which was the one that was showing up in my router configuration, that 10.0.0.6. So luckily I was able to log into that, and I played around in here and I found another port forwarding option. So I forwarded these ports. Same thing, except since this comes from the internet, I forward the same ports to my router. So the IP address for my router was where it was forwarded to, and then from there, like I'd already set up, it forwarded them again to my computer. And here we go. This is just like a little screenshot of the different options I had in there. So the very first one, when I was setting up the program to run just on my computer, I used this IP here, 1.27 or 127.0.0.1, and that should be the same for everybody, I think. Then the second time I tried it, just on the router in my own home, my little local network, that was the IP address for that. Remember I told you guys my server, my Raspberry Pi, is identified as 103 on my local server, which I fixed. I made that a static IP, so that'll never change. And then to connect over the internet, I set up the double port forwarding thing, and I now connect to 64 point blah blah 0.29, which is the what's my IP IP address, and those work for me. Well, I don't know if it's working for you or if this will work for you, because everybody's network situation is different, but it took a lot of figuring out for me, and I finally got it going. So there's a little screenshot, and I don't know, yeah, I put the other one in. So here's a little actually photo of my Raspberry Pi, and here it is. You're now connected to 24.114. So this is saying what I'm connected to, and like I told you guys, I set up my computer through through tethering, right? And this whole connection would drop every once in a while. I didn't know why, but I noticed that this number was different, and I'm in a really crappy area, so I think my cell signal was bouncing around from tower to tower trying to get a better signal. So over the course of about half an hour, I ended up connecting 3 times to these 3 different ISPs, IP addresses, and I just actually pulled the information for all those ones. They're all Rogers cable, but interestingly enough, it wasn't all the same. It's owned by Rogers Cable, but then it was run by this, and this was the location. So I had one out of BC, one out of Port Perry, Ontario, and one owned in Montreal. So that was just a little interesting note, but kind of unrelated. Anyway, yeah, there it is. I'm connected on my TP-Link home router from my server, and I am connected on, it doesn't show here, I'm tethering. And like I said in the other video, I modified the GUI as a test. So I'm going to be using this to control a robot. When I press this button, it sends an array, and the first number in the array is going to represent forward motion as a pulse width modulated signal. So the max is 1024 for that, or 1023 I guess. So when I hit this button, it sends the message, and I'll be modifying the entire GUI for different buttons and different numbers. And anyway, I really hope this helps some people out to connect their I guess little server connection from Bucky's Instant Messenger. I know it took me a long time to figure it out, and I hope this helps you guys. Leave a comment, and let me know if this helped, because that would be pretty cool. Anyway, like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and if not, oh well. Take her easy. Have a good one.